Anyway, the subtitle is something about how to live free of our inner critic. And I think that the subtitle should be something like learning to live from soul. So the book is set up to alternate between soul and the judge or the inner critic. So one chapter will be an explanation of where the judge came from and how it works. And the next chapter will be an introduction or a reintroduction to our soul. And an introduction because most of us have forgotten it. We have lost track of our own soul. We learn to take almost all of our cues about how to be in this world, our behaviors and our beliefs. We learn to take those from our ego rather than our soul. So most of us here, because we are intentional spiritual practitioners, know something of our soul. Everybody does actually know something of our soul. Everyone has those times when love, soul, beauty, truth, grace breaks through the regular moments of life and we become aware of them. We have this taste of soul. And we also have those moments where we're able to touch into our heart's deepest knowing. So instead of approaching something solely from the intellectual perspective, we instead know from a heart or soul level. So I just want to give a really, really brief overview of what the situation is between soul and superego or judge. So at birth, we were essentially pure soul. We had yet to learn anything at all, even the fact that we were separate from anything. We had yet to discover that we were a self. But our soul was completely intact from the get-go. So we had lots of people around us to teach us about how to be, how to act, how to behave, what to believe about the world. But we didn't have a lot of people to teach us about our own soul. So what we did have, and there's nothing wrong with this, was that we had people to teach us how to get along in the world. And that is where our ego developed. And that's what it is to be human. That is how we are. That's how it works to be on this earth, on this plane. So we learned language, we learned how to behave, we learned what's good and what's bad. We learned how we should look and how we shouldn't look. We learned how to dress. And so if you think about anything that you now know, we learned that somewhere. We took it in all kinds of ways. And so all of these things are the things that the ego uses to interact with the world. We need that. Part of ego is our personality. I look around the room. I really like all you people. So that is your personality. That is your ego that I really like. Looking around the room, I can say that I also know each of you as soul. And that is a completely different experience. So again, it is mostly a very good thing that we developed ego and personality. The only problem is that we came to completely understand ourselves as a self. But in actual practice, even for those of us who are either religious or very spiritually active, we almost exclusively see ourselves as an ego self. We know that part of ourselves. When people say, "Who are you?" we immediately go to our stats, our details about the ego self. And so we forget that we are a soul, and we don't know our own soul. And we've had few ways to come to understand and know our own soul. Therefore, of course, we don't trust our own soul. We don't know it and we don't know much about it, then we certainly don't know if we can trust it. And we don't trust that it can do for us what ego could do for us. So from the book Soul Without Shame, some of the functions of the superego, the inner critic, the judge, all these words are interchangeable, is that it's our conscience, it's our motivator, it's a guard, a guide, an authority figure. It can be our mirror or our yardstick. And Byron Brown, this is a quote from him, the author, says, "Each person needs all of these things. We need help in these ways. What you were not taught while growing up was how to discover the true source of all of these functions in your own soul." A reminder, this soul that we are, this part of ourself, that is the part of ourself that interfaces with love, with God, with the divine, with the sacred. Ego knows nothing of that. It interfaces with the world, what we see around us. So what we're learning in our book group is actually how to recognize the rampant tyranny of our inner critic, of our judge, how to work with that. But what I think is much more important is that we're learning to return to our own soul and to live, act, and be from that place, from the soul. So tonight we're going to explore an experience of art, and the art will be music tonight from our soul. I know that there are music lovers in this room. I know that music touches all of us very deeply. Music is one of the ways that love cuts through the ego, and we feel powerful things. And when you think about it, true art is actually all about soul. It's all about us experiencing, us feeling something in response to the truth, the beauty of the art, whatever form it takes. So we will do our usual practice tonight. We'll do the 4 stages of surrendered presence. Being aware that the stages lead us, 4 stages attempting to completely surrender. Complete surrender is where we come closest to our soul, because that's the space in which our ego has fallen away to whatever degree we're able. It's all been leading up to this letting go. Mostly what we're letting go of is all of our ideas about our soul, ourself, sorry, all our ideas about ourself. So that when all of those can fall away, we simply are our truest self, our soul. So when we get settled in the fourth stage, I'm just going to turn some music on. And the invitation is to really attempt not to flip back into ego self, and to experience the music as purely as possible through the soul. So staying in that surrendered place and just noticing what it is you feel. So when we experience from soul, it doesn't mean that we will like everything there. It will make us feel all kinds of things. Soul is capable of feeling everything, what we call the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. So whatever arises for you, let it come without judgment. So simply allowing your soul to experience this art. So as we enter into the practice of surrendered presence, once again affirming that we go about this in love. So I invite you now to simply drop into your own experience. And I invite you to draw your awareness to your physical being, your body, physical body. And just seeing what you notice there. Never with the intention of fixing or changing, but for the duration of the practice, simply being with your experience. You're now beginning to include whatever you're experiencing in your inner being. Emotions, feelings, imagery. Subtle energy, mind. And now, while experiencing yourself in the physical being and the inner being, beginning to also include your environment. the space around you. What is the feeling in the room? What can you hear, see, touch? So that you begin to experience yourself in the world, part of the world. That you can feel yourself here at this point on the globe, wherever that may be. And now simply directing your awareness to the space between your foot and the floor, or the space between your body and the chair. And letting your awareness rest there for a moment. And then see if you can sense the way your body is being acted upon by the force of gravity. And notice the way you're being pulled into the earth, held here. And recognizing that because you are held, you can relax. So checking in again with your own being. What effect does being held have on the body, on the inner experience? What is it like to be held here and to be here now, held? And then bringing your attention to your breath. And just being an observer of the breath in its cycle of air coming into the body, filling the chest, and then releasing again, flowing out. Noticing how the body draws the air in and then it relaxes, it lets go. And every time we do this practice, see if the body can teach you a little bit more about surrender. About the way it trusts it can let go of the breath. The way the next breath is always there. And then whenever you feel stabilized, whenever you feel truly grounded in that cycle of surrender, just letting the breath carry you into that stage 4 of complete surrender, letting go of thought, any sort of focusing of the awareness, any need to do anything at all. Just completely releasing yourself into love. So I'm going to play the music, and again, recognizing that where we travel to is actually home to our own soul, and that it is the soul that can interface with what is true and beautiful. Thank you for practicing with me. I'll see you next time. Love you all.